Well, hey, friends, thanks for tuning in today for another episode. We're coming to you each week with content that we hope is wise and insightful, helping you navigate the pandemic. Today, I get the privilege, the gift, the honor of sitting down with a friend and colleague, Pastor John Morgan. He has served in a variety of roles here at Ginghamsburg over the last 7 years, and a few months ago, received confirmation that he would be moving on to kind of a next phase of ministry for him, and none of us could have imagined what would transpire over the last 3 or 4 months, and we haven't been able to be together like we would have wished to be. And as John's time comes to an end here at the end of June 2020, we decided to sit down together and walk down kind of memory lane together. John and I began our friendship and ministry together in 2013. And so we're going to kind of wind back the clock and take a look at some really impactful moments that we got to experience, some of them together, some of them not. And I hope that our journey and conversation today is interesting and helpful for you as you look back over your life and find the impactful and meaningful moments as well. So, John, thank you for hanging out and sitting down today.
Oh, man, my pleasure.
That's awesome.
Appreciate it, yeah.
Our friendship did begin about 7 years ago, and we're going to actually kind of walk through 10 pictures today that kind of capture maybe top 10 John Morgan memories or moments at Ginghamsburg, although there's 1,000 more that we could talk about. These are 10 that have been really impactful. And as we were preparing for this conversation, you said that you texted back after we had kind of named some moments. You were like, Rusty, like, it's incredible. Like, some people don't even get to talk about one of these things. And we get to talk about 10 amazing things that have happened. And
yeah, I don't take for granted for 1 minute just the crazy good ministry that has taken place over the last 7 years. I have, like you said, friends in the ministry who really wish they had one of these moments.
Yeah.
And it's really been a sweet time for not just me, but my family as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had prayed earlier about maybe there's going to be laughter or tears. I'm like choking it back right now.
Already, yeah.
We're not even like a minute
We haven't
into
even really started yet. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at our first picture today. This is a picture from April 15th, 2013, and it was your first day as campus pastor at Fort McKinley.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about maybe what was going through your mind then and what this picture brings up for you right now.
First of all, how little the boys are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eli and Mickey and JJ look like babies, man. They look like
A
babies.
lot has happened in their lives in the last 7 years too. We felt at home right as soon as we walked into the building.
Yeah.
And we just knew this is family.
Yeah.
To us. And what a sweet day. If many of you watching will remember, that was in the middle of the superhero message series that we did.
Yep.
And it was exciting to talk about some of the heroes in my life. You know, little did I know, I probably could have expected people sitting in that worship space became our heroes as well.
Yeah,
and so,
for sure. I think you preached on Gideon that day, maybe.
That was
right?
Gideon was my tryout sermon.
Oh, that was the first one.
Yeah,
okay.
that's
hey,
that's when I came before I was hired on.
That's right.
You all wanted to see if I could preach.
Well, apparently it worked out.
That one was actually a message with Elijah and Elisha.
Elisha. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And you told Pastor Dave Hood, who was the campus pastor at the time, that like Elisha asked Elijah for a double portion of ministry, saying, hey, I want to accomplish all that you've done and more, not out of ego, but out of a desire for impact.
Yeah.
You made that same ask that day.
I think that's what God wants. That He doesn't want us. A lot of times, like, oh man, if I could just do half as much as you, and God's like, why do you want to do half as much?
Yeah.
Ask for a double portion. You know, do twice as much.
Yeah. There's a quote. I'll misquote it, but it says, your playing small does no good for the world.
Yeah.
And so you played big that day. You said, hey, I want more. That's awesome. That was a special day. We're going to take a look at the second picture, which is actually a picture that brings up a memory for you about a message you preached on July 21st, 2013, that same year. So really just a handful of months later. Talk about why that's so significant.
A few months later, we put together this sermon based on John chapter 4, the woman at the well.
Yeah.
And the long story short, the main message was everyone has a place at the well. And it wasn't just me writing that sermon, but of course how we do it here, the whole team captured what was on my heart, and that's the phrase, seeing people as people. And that Sunday was kind of when we kicked off. That's 7 years ago, and that has become a phrase that we put on T-shirts now. It's written on the walls at Fort McKinley. We see it on a lot of social media, but that particular sermon, that particular day, is when we started to move forward, seeing people as people. Everyone belongs at the well.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It's become who we are, really.
And we've returned to that text a handful of times. You know what I mean? It's one of, I think it's one of our movement's favorites. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it captures so much of who I think we feel like God's calling us to be. So that was awesome. I think some people call those kairos moments, where like divine time and earthly time kind of like come together in a really profound way that are impactful and kind of stick. So special day. This picture is from an event that had a handful of names, but I think it finally landed at Kickball with the Cops or something like that. Talk about this picture, and we could show 100 more from these events.
This was something really grassroots event where we were sitting around in the office at Fort McKinley thinking, how can we bring the community together? Specifically, it was a time much like now where there was a conflict between law enforcement and civilians throughout the nation. And we have just so many friends in the law enforcement agencies in Dayton. And we thought, man, we need to figure out something that can bring the community together, let everyone know that we're all playing on the same team.
Right.
And I forget whose idea it was. A lot of these things, my name gets put on it, but it's probably someone smarter than me sitting in the office. Why don't we just have a kickball game?
Right.
And we grilled hot dogs, I think, that first event. And so it was like literally knocking on doors, getting people to come out and play kickball with the law enforcement. And of course, there's our good friend Zach. It's so symbolic, that picture of just what we tried to accomplish in the Fort McKinley neighborhood.
Building bridges and bringing healing, trying to bring real healing and real transformation, not just choosing sides and that kind of stuff.
And I loved it. It ended up where the Dayton police officers, they split themselves up into two teams, and I remember them just saying, "All right, you're with me, and we've done that maybe 4 or 5 times since then."
Always a really fun time. And then eventually we had like fire trucks, and like I think that first one was pretty simple, but then it kind of became a neighborhood block party.
I think everyone wanted to get involved. They saw how cool it was the first time. There was one time when we planned the event, we ordered like 100 pizzas. We were expecting a big crowd, and it rained.
And so you had all this pizza to
We
get
had all
rid
these pizzas, and I think you had the idea, why don't we just knock on people's doors and say, here's a free pizza for you? And that was like a cool Fort McKinley moment as well, handing out free pizzas that people didn't order.
Fun to give stuff away, especially when it's a surprise to even you. Like, hey, look, I've got 100 pizzas. You want one? Very cool. That was a very meaningful moment. So this picture is from a trunk or treat event, which is, talk about what trunk or treat has been in at Fort McKinley.
Trunk or treat has, first of all, just meeting the needs of the community, having a safe trick or treat. So the kids can get all dressed up. Parents.
A lot of neighbors. I live in that neighborhood, and a lot of neighbors really don't participate in it the way I did as a kid, growing up or whatever. So it is cool to have a safe kind of confined area for folk to come and hang out.
the first time I was involved with it, I was just surprised. It is Fort McKinley folk that come, but really the whole community of Dayton.
Yeah.
It's no exaggeration. Some of the years there were over 1,000 people
Yeah.
who came through. And some of those years it poured down rain and we had people go through the building.
Yeah,
and,
I had another picture there was a big line out the door and the weather was not friendly. And the Fort McKinley building was not designed to hold 1,000 people, so
Right.
people were lined up.
But it's I always looked at this as a way of also telling the community thank you for
Yeah.
supporting us.
Yeah.
This is just a simple way of celebrating the great people of Dayton.
Yeah.
And it ended. Every year it's a huge celebration. People look forward to that. And there is a gospel message that's shared that evening. The love of God is definitely communicated in everything that we've done.
Sure.
But again, I love the way it's part of the Fort McKinley DNA of just saying thanks to the people who support the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This picture is from the Fort McKinley Community Room in the second level of the building, and a lot of things take place in that space, but probably one of the most profound things that kind of rose up during your time at Fort McKinley was a ministry, an experience called Soul Food Cafe. Talk a little bit about Soul Food.
Again, I mean, it's crazy to think about all the things that we started together.
Yeah.
You and me,
Yep.
and of course other folks on staff.
Sure.
But we were doing worship 3 different hours at Fort McKinley: 8:30, 10, and 11:30.
11:30, yeah.
And the 8:30 crowd was a dedicated crowd. There'd be some mornings where there'd be 30 people in worship.
Right.
It'd start out with like a handful of folks, and then they'd trickle in, and we're like, oh my goodness.
I remember worship leading and oftentimes doing the call to worship and being like, hey, the 5 of us are going to sing some songs today. You know what I mean? And no, you're right. It would fill in. But anyways, yeah. So there were moments where it felt like that.
And there would be hundreds of people at that time eating breakfast.
Right. Literally in the same building.
In the
just a
same
different part.
building,
Yeah.
and it's 7 steps.
Literally.
Yep. 7 steps up to the community room. And for some reason, a lot of those people couldn't make the journey down 7 steps
Yeah.
to come to worship.
Yeah.
Which didn't mean that they weren't connected with God, or didn't mean that they didn't want to worship, but something in their life
Yeah.
made it impossible for them to step into the worship
That worship
space.
room.
Yeah. We would go up and grab breakfast before worship, and people would always say, Pastor, can you pray with me? What good word do you have for us? And so we would spend more and more time, and we would be in worship, or I would be preaching, and my heart was just still upstairs in the breakfast time. And so we thought, man, there's such a missed opportunity here where people want to connect with God.
Yeah.
And so we moved worship from the worship space up to breakfast. Probably the smartest thing in the 7 years I was here that we ever did, because that just brought just so much growth.
Yeah.
To not numerical, although that did happen, but so much growth to our leaders and our, all of our people to experience worship with another community.
Mm-hmm.
And just the deep meaning, the relationships built, doing worship around tables together.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're...
Yeah, no, I mean, I go, it takes me back to that, maybe the second or third picture we talked about, seeing people as people.
Yeah.
And so here we are, we we see people upstairs, and again, like you said, for whatever reason, feeling disqualified, feeling overlooked, feeling left out, feeling like they didn't belong, whatever it was.
Yeah.
No one was intending for any of that to be felt,
Yeah.
but people did. And so seeing people as people said, hey, if people upstairs want to connect spiritually and worship and experience what we're experiencing downstairs, but for some reason can't make that journey, then why don't we make that journey for people, and bring that kind of ministry to where people are, which again I think is who Fort McKinley, who Ginghamsburg dreams of being.
Yeah, it brings Pastor Rachel's tagline a lot of times is Jesus eats with everyone.
Yeah.
And that's a great picture of.
Yeah.
We didn't bring Jesus to the Soul Food Cafe. We joined what Jesus was doing at Soul Food Cafe.
Yeah, that's good. That's good theology. We're always joining God where God is already working.
Yeah.
That's good. We could talk about that for a long time. Is there something else you want to say about it?
I mean, there's, probably, but you and I can do that some other time when we're together. But,
Sounds good. You're getting a glimpse of the John and Rusty conversation. This is how they go. Well, this picture kind of connects with Soul Food Cafe, but it's a picture from the front of the Fort McKinley Worship Center, going down the center aisle there. I love the light in the room and all that kind of stuff. But what we talked about was that out of the Soul Food Cafe breakfast and worship ministry, you and our staff made friends with a lot of men and women who were struggling with addiction.
Yeah.
And you had the honor as well as the grief journey of walking through their end of life services several times, and with their families and so this is where, if there was a casket there, this is where that casket would be sitting, or this is where the memorial of this person would be sitting. Do you want to share a story or a thought about a friend or two? I know you've mentioned some names to me of people whose services you did.
Yeah. There was one Saturday, Elizabeth, my wife Elizabeth, and I were in the worship space. I forget why that particular day, but I would have been sitting, right from that vantage point on the stage. And one of our friends who struggled with addiction walked in. His name's James. Mm-hmm. He was struggling that day, and he came in for prayer. Yeah. He explained to me. Said, Pastor, I want you to know that I didn't plan for my life to end up like this. I quit using every morning and then pick back up in the afternoon. He just explained to me the disease that his addiction was. Yeah. And it really helped me understand. And he explained how much he loves God, his relationship with Jesus, like every morning he prays. And he went missing, ended up he OD'd. Yeah. We did his memorial service. Yep. It wasn't too long after that conversation.
I think you got to connect with his mom through that
connected
experience.
with his mom. Actually several of our community partners, New Path connected, had a chance to connect. Keith with the community garden. Yep.
Him and James were good buddies.
They were good buddies. James was so involved with Fort McKinley Church, with Soul Food Cafe, community garden, helping with New Path. The list goes on, just how involved. Yeah. And so it was an honor. I was wondering, would anyone show up for the memorial? And it was just crazy when we announced it during church, all the people whose life James had touched. From people on the street to executives in the community. It's just, what an honor. That he brought people together like that. Rusty, there's another. This one's quick, and if we keep the story, great. If not, then at least I'll share with you. another good friend, I remember walking, again, same deal, struggled with addiction. He was really sick. He wanted his mom to know that he loved Jesus. So his name's Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
He had his cell phone, took out of his pocket, and recording while he was going up to take communion. And he said, "Mom, I just want you to know I love Jesus. This is my church. This is my pastor. He's going to serve me communion today."
That's awesome.
And same story, man. We ended up burying him maybe a week later.
Mm-hmm.
But this is that room right there, heaven and earth are really close. Really close. I think this is the type of ministry that Jesus would be part of.
Yeah.
The type of ministry that Jesus is a part of. Yeah.
This picture.
This is our Italy campus.
This is our Italy campus right here. And that's the ministry team right here. Good looking crew. So in March of, I think it was 2018, I think.
Yeah, it seems like yesterday.
It does. And so long ago at the same time. Some dear friends of yours and then it became friends of Renee's and mine, blessed us with the opportunity to travel with them to Italy. And
Yeah.
we went to Rome and Monciano, out in Tuscany, I believe. And what a fun, crazy experience. Anything you want to say about Italy?
Oh, man.
How was the wine?
I'd go back tomorrow.
I think about every March rolls around and we get reminders in our timelines and we text each other like, "Hey, what do you guys say? Jump on a plane."
We had a full week, the first week we were in Rome together, and toward the Vatican, went to the Colosseum. I mean, those were holy moments too.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about scripture coming alive, touring the Colosseum and just understanding really the persecution of the early church.
Yeah.
So we put many steps
I didn't have my little step counter that day, but yeah, we would have had a lot of them.
That whole week, and then some more holy moments when we just spent the week enjoying friends, fellowship.
Yeah.
We met a winemaker not too far from our villa, and just as crazy as it sounds, did the holy work of bottling wine.
Yeah.
And looking out the Tuscany landscape.
Yep.
And
I cried.
Yeah.
Is Alessandro?
Yeah.
I cried in his living room because we weren't, like, it wasn't a published place. Like, it was literally this little private winery.
And we almost didn't visit it because I was scared to go up the mountain.
Our wives were the ones that, Renee and Elizabeth.
It looked too steep. I was like, I don't know if our little car can do this.
But we figured out a phone number. We call them, and they spoke English, which we didn't speak Italian. It was a good thing.
Yeah.
And they said, "No, come on up. No, come on up." And we're like, okay. So we went up, and literally this guy lives, works, and plays at this winery. And he said, "Why don't you come?" Like, it was the epitome of hospitality, right?
Yeah.
Like, we showed up unannounced. We weren't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
It didn't even exist for us. There wasn't even an option for us to show up, and we still did. And he said, "Come on in." And we realized, oh, we're not going into the winery. We were going into his living room.
His living room.
And so he cracks open the wine and he brings out the spread. He just had all the things, and it was like it was meant to be. And we came back the next day or something later in the week, and like you said, the holy work of making wine. It was I just remember taking a picture and crying like, this is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, that was a restful couple weeks, and I would go back to the same spot.
Yep. Do it all again. It was beautiful. This picture is from an afternoon of love, peace, unity, inclusion, I think is what it was called, at a Macintosh Park, I think it was where it was at in Dayton.
Yeah.
Talk about what this picture means and what all that was going on.
Yeah, several months before that, we mean the Dayton and the greater Miami Valley, found out that the a chapter of the KKK was going to come and demonstrate.
That's right.
At the courthouse square, and we were talking about it at the dinner table, and my son said, "Dad, what are you going to do about that?" And he was talking to me, but also talking about Ginghamsburg, Fort McKinley.
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to do? And I thought, man, my son understands the work of the church. Wow. So again, it's one of those deals where we're sitting in the office talking, what are we going to do? And we ended up going to a meeting where all these organizations in Dayton gathered together, all these churches, and can you believe it? The churches couldn't agree on how we were going to respond.
Oh, the church.
Yeah.
We love you, the church.
And so Marcy Walker, several others, we agreed we would team up with the NAACP and host this event at McIntosh Park. Marcy really did a lot of the
did a lot of the
legwork, and we encourage folk, don't draw attention to the rally, but go to this community event.
Yeah.
Anyways, this was our way of demonstrating the just the beauty in all the people.
Yeah.
Of Dayton.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It was a great event. Really demonstrated how awesome Dayton and the surrounding area is. I think there were like 30, 40 very diverse organizations that came together to pull this off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This picture doesn't capture enough probably, but it was the same year as the KKK rally and all the events too.
It was the very next day.
Yeah. And tornadoes blew through Dayton. And that was pretty impactful for our church, for our community, but also for you. So talk a little bit about tornado relief, all that stuff.
This one's hard. Again, you mentioned earlier when pictures pop up. And so they have been. This is, a year later.
Yeah.
And it's still hard.
What makes it hard for you?
I live, maybe it takes 6 minutes to drive to the church. I remember getting in the car early, trying to drive to Fort McKinley, and it took, must have been 2 hours.
This is the day after the tornadoes hit, yeah. Or the day.
The day after, and just seeing the devastation. I remember being so angry. Specifically by where the path that I would take into work, just how the tornadoes totally discriminated along the economic lines and ripped through. It was tough. I remember sitting one of the cool things, people just automatically knew that we would be receiving supplies, and so people just started bringing supplies to the Fort McKinley campus and the Point campus at that time.
At that time, yeah.
And I didn't know what to do, to be honest with you. And then Marcy Walker, I mentioned her name quite a bit. She said, "Come on, Pastor, we need to go out to the neighborhood and talk with people and see what do the people need." And so we went out. and brought sandwich supplies and water and just talking with folk. What do you need? We figured out right away they needed chainsaws and food and water, because if you remember, the water supply was shut down
right.
as well. There's no electricity.
Yep. It's devastating.
Yeah, and so we just put out there, hey, if anyone wants to make a difference in the community, meet us at the Fort McKinley campus. We're going to go out and do whatever needs. And people just started coming, and we ended up being just a resource center for people who needed supplies. We ended up being a center to deploy workers. I remember I think it was the first day that we were out there, maybe the second day, my phone just kept on ringing. I found out that somehow my number became like one of the hotlines for...
They had slipped your number in accidentally as a
Yeah,
hotline.
I don't know how that happened, but I had military leaders calling me, how can we deploy our troops? And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Captain Morgan,
Yeah.
how can we deploy troops? Oh, wait, what did I just say?
I remember my wife calling me that day. I saw her number. I was like, oh, praise Jesus. It's like,
Right.
And I cried for like 10 minutes straight. Like, I've never done this before. I don't know what to do. And she said, just keep on doing what you're doing. Tell people how they can love the community. That same phone call, she said, there's like an informal list going on at the hospital. She works for one of the major hospitals in Dayton. And she said there's an informal list going around where people can receive help, supplies. And she says, you're not going to believe this. Every, like the top 5 names on that list end with United Methodist Church.
Wow.
New City United Methodist Church, Fort McKinley United Methodist Church, The Point, Stillwater, and like the names of all the Dayton area United Methodist churches were the ones on the top of that informal list of where people knew, hey, you can go to this place and receive.
That's a good reputation to have.
Yeah, it's the way I look at it as our practical theology, just putting our love into action. That's not to discount. I know there are others, others out there, and for some reason though, that was.
It feels good in those moments to be seen that way.
Yeah. And so I'm super proud of, Ginghamsburg, Fort McKinley, The Point. Just we were so active. The other day after serving breakfast to go at Fort McKinley, I asked Elizabeth, can we come and cry again on this one? Can we just drive through the neighborhoods a year later? Oh my goodness, Rusty, like the work that has been done in 1 year.
Yeah.
I wasn't directly impacted, but it just did my heart so good to see all the houses that have been rehabbed, how beautiful the neighborhoods look. There are still houses under construction. There are still a few houses that have been left abandoned for one reason or another. But just to see the beauty, the signs of hope, oh my goodness, did my heart good.
Yeah.
I can imagine being the homeowner and having a brand new home.
Yeah, seeing what you have go from everything to nothing and back
and
to
there
something
are still members of our church who are actively involved in tornado recovery. Like it hasn't. They say 1 to 3 years for residential recovery, and maybe like 5 to 10 years before the whole community recovers. Yeah. Commercial. So
really important picture. The last picture is this one of you and Pastor Carl and Pastor Rachel and one of our brothers in the movement at his baptism in the river.
Yeah.
Pretty cool picture. What's that bring up for you?
I think the most important ministry that all of us do together, the most important thing is the baptisms. You and I have done quite a few together, standing in that pool.
Yeah.
Or in the river.
Yep.
Or,
Baptism for you is really important. What does that signify in your life and in the lives of the people in the water for
This
you?
is, you see people saying yes to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I think this makes ministry worth it. Rusty, I actually went down to that spot 2 days ago.
Mm.
We use the term remember your baptism.
Mm-hmm.
I just went down and just like ran my fingers through the water just at this very spot and just remember what Christ has done in my life, but also remembering how many people said yes in that spot.
Yeah.
In the pools at the TIP campus, at the Point, at Fort McKinley, in the worship space there.
Yeah.
I think we do a lot of good things. We do a lot of good work. Like you said, there's 10 pictures here,
Mm-hmm.
but even beyond those 10 pictures, we put our faith into action in so many ways. But this is the reason.
Mm-hmm.
Is bringing people to Jesus.
Yeah.
Seeing whole families come to Jesus together in the water of baptism. Churches being renewed because they see brothers and sisters being baptized, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember the joy of my salvation. Right. And it brings just that fire of faith just gets reignited. I know there's a picture in there somewhere, even one Easter.
Oh yeah, I took it out.
The Fort McKinley celebration, we had baptisms, renewal baptisms. I think it took probably 20, 30 minutes to get through the whole thing. One thing I remember the most, there's this one friend of ours in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And he had his little dog with him. And I said, well, who's going to hold the dog while you get baptized? He said, I'm holding the dog. Like, all right. And so
you might be the only pastor who ever. What happened next?
Well, first of all, we had an army of men lift him up out of the chair. He couldn't navigate it himself. Get him from the chair into the pool while he's carrying his dog. And I just...
You didn't pull a get up and walk kind of thing and make him...
No.
You didn't. Okay, you carried him into the pool.
That would have been amazing.
Would have been amazing.
And so we baptized him and his dog. Talk about holy moments. And I remember holding his nose while he covered his dog's nose. And everyone went under, came back up. It was the largest celebration
I'm sure everybody
I've heard.
Yeah, they went nuts.
Everyone went absolutely nuts. And again, I was like, isn't this what Jesus would do?
Yeah. Meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
Baptizing them and their dogs. And I mean, it literally, in all seriousness, like, you want to be part of the family? Come on.
They got certificates, the both of them. They both got the
dog got a certificate.
They both got the T-shirts. The dog wore that T-shirt to worship like the next month.
I did not know that part of the story. I'm glad that this is the last picture because that's like the best. That's the best part of my day so far.
Yeah.
Well, dude, it is bitter and sweet and all the things, all the feels, to get to remember all these moments. Again, some of them I got to be right alongside you, some of them not, but always witness to the way God was working through you and the team at Fort McKinley and really the entire Ginghamsburg movement. So it was fun to get to talk about doing this conversation and then actually having it and capturing it for our friends to I hope that that helps them see how instrumental you've been in your 7-year journey, as well as the Fort McKinley community to the entire Ginghamsburg movement, and that we're all in this together. I hope that it helps connect those dots and helps us all journey into our next together. So thanks so much for taking time to be here today, for crying, for laughing, whatever. Anything else you want to say to your Ginghamsburg family?
Well, first of all, to you, Rusty, I mean, of course, we have each other's phone numbers.
Yeah,
like,
sure. Yeah. You won't
but
be far either.
yeah,
So,
what an honor it's been, like we say, for our families
Yeah.
to join together
Yeah.
and to do ministry together. These pictures you and I have have really encouraged one another through, and even aside from ministry, just the time that we spend weekly
Yeah.
encouraging. It's in our schedule. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We get together and we encourage one another. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
When
Likewise.
Elizabeth and I announced to the overall church that God has called us to something new,
Yeah.
it was on this spot where this living room was set up, and
Yep.
the exact words, I think, hey, we're going to have plenty of time to do handshakes and hugs and say goodbye. And
Yeah.
that just so weird, because the next Sunday we're worshiping online only.
Yeah. And then for 4 months.
And for 4 months. And so I hope as many people are watching this as are connected to the Ginghamsburg moment,
Yeah.
just because I want to hear you. I want you to hear me tell you thank you from my family, my wife, my kids, our moms and dads, especially from the bottom of my heart. Just thank you for allowing me to be part of this family. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the amazing things that God is doing in this movement. It's important for me that everyone knows how much this place has meant to me.
Yeah.
And as crazy as this season has been, Rusty, thank you for this opportunity for me to be able to extend that to all the folks that I love.
You bet, man. It's
Yeah.
an honor to get to do it. We'll actually be sharing a little bit about your journey in worship in a few weeks, and even an outdoor worship at Fort McKinley on June 28th. People can come out and celebrate you as part of that worship experience too. So isn't our last moment, but one of the final ones. So thanks for
Yeah.
making time to share it. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.